Welcome to It's All in Your Head podcast. I'm Michelle Walker and I'm here with Tara Ray, and this is episode 15. And today what we're going to be talking about is Tara and I want to discuss with you some of what's happening psychologically in the world today and help you understand what's going on in the minds of people today and help you get a better understanding of why everybody is reacting or acting the way that they are, and maybe why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. Okay, so Tara, why don't you talk to me about how you've been feeling and what you think is happening?
So I think that that's two different things because, of course, watching what's going on, I couldn't help but have some kind of an emotional reaction. And I'm one of those people who doesn't watch the news because it just makes me more anxious sometimes. But at the time that this began, we also were watching the results of the two Senate election or runoff elections here in Georgia. So I was watching because I was trying to make sure I knew exactly what was happening with those races. And then while I'm watching it, I think I was watching one of the major news, like one of the national news, and they started to go through the vote for the electoral college ratification. And I was watching, it was something I'd never seen before, people challenging. And then they started with it looks like people are, because it was all live. And so I'm watching it and I'm going, they're really running into the Capitol. But I never, for some reason, it didn't really click. What was happening was actually violent at that point. It looked kind of like, the only thing I can think of at first, like rowdy teenagers, because I happened to catch a glimpse of the painted guy that they keep showing. So that's my first reaction to it. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Because we can get deeper into it. I have a whole lot of feelings about it. But as far as just my initial reaction, that was my initial reaction. I was still shocked because what my brain was saying was, how disrespectful. Like, why would these, and it just, what hit me was like, why would these kids be, acting rowdy and running up the Capitol stairs? That's the first thing that came to my mind. But again, not at first did I think anything about violence.
Well, I think that the interesting thing for me, because I have been obsessed most recently with the play Hamilton. And so Alexander Hamilton, the play is just amazing. Have you seen that play?
No.
So the play Alexander Hamilton, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, was written to include ethnic people in a play of history that took place mostly with white people. It was back when 200 years ago, when the country was trying to become a democracy and break away from a monarchy. And it tells the history of that, and it tells it using kind of an immigrant's point of view from today. It's almost like it tells it in a rap, and it is the coolest thing. You've really got to watch it. And so if you ever want to just hear the soundtrack, you can just ask Alexa to play the soundtrack of Hamilton for you.
Alexa is a whole nother story. I am a conspiracy theorist. I do not have Alexa in my house. She is not here.
Alexa seems to be okay, but there's other things like, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But anyway, so I've been listening to Hamilton, and what Alexander Hamilton was alive during a time when the country was trying to break away from a monarchy and become a democracy. And it was called the American Experiment at the time. And as I was listening to all the history involved with that and the passion that the people had, and they were willing to fight and go to civil war to become this American experiment they wanted to become. And it all of a sudden clicked with me that that's exactly what is happening in our country right now, that we've had 200 years of democracy that has not, it's evolved into something that is no longer really the democracy that the founding fathers imagined. It's now become more where the wealthy get wealthier and the rest of us kind of struggle to live. And so it isn't what the founding fathers imagined. And people are kind of tired of that and they want something different. And what they want different is more of a program that, I'm going to call it a socialist program, although I don't know that that's a proper word, but is a problem it's a program that's more socially responsible for sure. And that's what the country wants now. And so we're about half and half divided, where half of the people want the old system and half of the people want something different. And it's creating the same kind of passion and the same kind of anger that's described in the play Hamilton, when the founding fathers were trying to create a democracy away from a monarchy. And it's just amazing to me that it's the very same psychological dynamic. And I see civil war starting. That's what I see.
What's concerning to me is that, well, and this is what I feel like. I feel like the people who were storming the Capitol and having this insurrection and committing what has been termed treason are people who want the old system.
They do. Mm-hmm.
And what's concerning to me about that is that doesn't include me. Mm-hmm. And the issue that has happened is it because I kept hearing, why did they keep saying stealing the election, and all of these different things. And then it occurred to me, this is my feeling on it. Other people might feel differently. So let me say that loud and clear. But my feeling on it is that they actually believe that the election was stolen because Black people and people of color got out and voted, when that old system never intended to include us in that process in the first place. So they do feel robbed. Because I watched, there was this guy who ended up getting fired from a university. And these are professional people. These are people of means that are doing these things. I heard, and these could be rumors, but I heard on the news that I think one of the people who died actually flew to DC in a private plane. So these are not people who don't have the means to take care of the things that they need to take care of. These are some people who have some affluence. And when I was reading this guy's tweet, he tweeted to Stacey Abrams that something, it was very disrespectful, but he called her Fat Albert and said all these things. But his main point, he said, thank you for teaching them how to steal an election. And that is when I was like, that's really what is believed. Because how can you teach someone to, like, it just didn't make sense. But that's what it was. Typically, we sit out, we don't vote, and this has been an issue. Or some people, I've always voted because I've always taken pride in that. But I know that some people, based on whether it was voter suppression, lack of voter education, whatever it was, had not been as proactive as they were this year in voting. And that happening in key states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, those types of states where the minority or the people considered to be minority or people of color got out in huge record numbers and voted. And that, to a white supremacist type of mindset, is disrespectful to them. That was an affront to them because they don't believe that we even have the right to be doing that. So to me, I was offended every time I heard it. They stole the election. They did. It was voter fraud. It was this. It was that. What else can you do? That's it. That's not what it was, but it seemed to be that way based on the mindset of some of these people.
Right. And it is the system that we have. right now, and it's the system that we've trusted for a long time, and we have to trust the system that we have. And the system that we have says that that's how the vote turned out.
Mhm.
And in the past, that's what we've done. We've trusted that system.
Mhm. So why does 2021, why is it any different?
Mm.
Or 2020?
Yeah. And so that's where something is going to happen. And I'm scared personally. I'm frightened. I think that um, I think that there will be a civil unrest. I don't know how it will end. Being in the older generation, um, it makes me afraid because it's usually the young people that fight these things out, in history, historically speaking, it's usually younger people that fight these things out.
Mhm.
And it just makes me afraid for that. I don't want to see that happen. Um, I don't know.
I agree. I don't know what will happen. It's just concerning that I guess I would say this. I'm one who usually says, I want you to tell me what you feel about me. Then we can operate on the same playing field. But I didn't know that it was so many people who would come
Yeah,
out with this kind of an attitude. So it's like, okay, and I don't want to, but I find myself looking over my looking over my
me
shoulder a little
too.
bit, you
Yeah,
know. And I mean, we believe in having firearms, so I don't mind sharing that.
right.
And I had to go and get fingerprinted for my Georgia weapons carry license, and the young lady who fingerprinted me was like, 90% of the fingerprints I'm doing these days are people getting their weapons carry license.
Which we did recently as well. And I don't know, and I know that sounds, maybe it sounds alarmist, but it just feels more comfortable to feel safe, I guess. I don't know. It
And
just
and
feels,
and I don't want people to misconstrue that we're saying we're arming ourselves, because that's not what we're saying. We've had weapons from before,
right.
but we're both new to Georgia, so that's different. Thank you for joining us for It's All in Your Head podcast. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and please comment. Whatever mental health questions you have, we will be happy to answer them in future podcasts. It's just I guess it's the feeling like you don't know and realizing, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
this is what I'm looking at. Because the other time it was a civil war, it was about slavery. So what are we talking about?
Hmm.
Is there a return to that? And there was this movie, and I don't know who seen it. I didn't think it was very good, but the premise was very interesting, and it was called Antebellum. And
Hmm.
that came out this year, and it had Janelle Monáe, I think is how you say her name, but she was like a power player. I forgot what her profession was. And they had these people going around kidnapping people and putting them back in slavery, but they were kidnapping the people who were affluent and visible, like whatever she was doing, because she was doing, I think she was doing like interviews on TV and different things like that. But it was basically to say, we're going to show you your place.
Hmm. Wow.
And taking them and putting them like in a plantation type situation. They're picking cotton, they were doing all kinds of stuff like that. And it was like, okay, just the idea. And I don't even know who made the movie or who the
How does
director
that
was
make,
or anything like
how
that.
does that make you feel? How does that
How
make
does
you
what
feel?
make me feel?
Just that idea that your ancestors were doing that.
I don't know that it makes me feel anyway, because it's just the fact. That's what
Hmm.
happened. But I think I have a certain indignancy that rises up to think that after all that we've gone through as a nation
Hmm.
combined, that we would be at this place where, because I got used to, I think, it being very covert, knowing traditionally the United States is more of a racist type of a country. It just is. But to know that we've gotten to this point where it's out in the open again, and people have no shame in expressing how they feel, and comparing what happened to the Black Lives Matter movement, where people are saying we're tired of our sons being shot and killed in the street. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of thing. Just it I don't know. It gives me pause, and it does make me angry. It makes me angry because I still have to worry about my kids. I have to worry, like, I feel like that. And then it's like, what is going on? Do other people see like really what's going on? Mm-hmm. And just to even hear the commentators say, if that was because what they did when the Black Lives Matter movement was out there just with a peaceful protest with tear gas and rubber bullets and all of that, and then you have these people who actually cause folks to lose their lives, and they weren't met with that same kind of force. So it's just a lot. I don't know. So I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess I try to understand it from everybody's point of view, you know. When the Black Lives Matter movements were happening, I didn't agree. Both of us have said we don't agree with looting things and destruction and things like that. At the same time, we both said that we understood that people get carried away in a mob mentality, and people were angry, and people were angry. And they were trying to make their voices be heard, and nobody was listening. And when nobody's listening, people have tantrums, you know, they just do. And what happened at the Capitol, we were trying to put it in a perspective, and if we were trying to do the same thing and put ourselves in the people's point of view, like you said, they do believe that there was some voter fraud. And so they do believe an election was stolen from them. And so because of that, they had come to protest what was happening. Now, mob mentality would say that one person probably did a violent act and it caused other people to follow. And then that's what happened. You know, that's what the whole thing started, and that's how the whole thing ended. And there are still, you know, just a little under half, of course, of the people in the country who don't want things to change. And then there's over half of the people who want things to change. And so we're still at kind of that half and half mark of things to change. I don't know. I don't know if I have an opinion that matters in this case. I can see that both sides want the same thing in some cases, because my husband is very conservative, but he's not so conservative that he agrees with what's happening. Because he said the race wasn't close enough, Biden won, and he just let go of it, you know. He's not one of those that's out there saying, oh, it was a steal or any of that. He said, you know, he looked at all the facts. He agreed with the courts when they looked at all the facts, and he said there's no evidence that any of it was a fraud. Joe Biden won, and he accepted it. That's just it, you know. But the thing is that the conservatives also wanted to try to be more socially responsible. Ideally, they wanted to try and have more social programs, at the same time preserving the ability to gain wealth if people wanted to. They just were going to do it at a much slower pace. Now, the people on the other side really want to have this accelerated pace, it seems like to me, of taking care of our people, of really taking care of people and taking care of the earth. And they want to do it at a very accelerated rate. And unfortunately, they haven't thought about how to pay for it. So that's kind of where the two sides are at odds. One side wants to do it slowly and try to pay for it and preserve their wealth. The other side wants to do it quickly and hasn't really thought about how to pay for it. They'll figure that out as they go along. I think both sides could probably meet in the middle somewhere, just looking at it objectively. You could probably have a third party that would figure that whole thing out. If you want to just really peacefully resolve the whole thing, you could have a third party that would figure the whole thing out, and that might resolve the whole thing. But psychologically speaking, I was talking to Serge about this, and I said, if you really wanted to take the needs of every person into consideration, here's what you would do. If you were Joe Biden, you would say, hey, there's some people that feel like there's still a dispute about the election. Let's not take President Trump out of office yet. He and I work together until we feel like there's been a peaceful resolution of this. And there would be two presidents for a period of time. And we would get to the bottom of the situation with whether or not the elections were really, in some way there was any fraud. Because a couple, some of, I think it was Arizona, they were in question of whether or not there was some fraud in their election. And he would actually, each of them would honor the other person's point of view until there was some sort of resolution. Now, that would be, psychologically speaking, something that both sides would be okay with.
I don't think so. Because you're dealing with someone who is unreasonable and who presents as unstable, even in their conversation. In my opinion, again, this is Tara's opinion, no one else. This is Tara's opinion. But, and that's how I feel. I remember a while ago, and there's a therapy group that I'm a part of, and it was jokingly, but they did all these different things that they could have as diagnoses for Donald Trump. And it was joking, but just the fact that because the behavior that was presented was very unstable. Some of the things that would be said were very unstable. These people marching on the Capitol, we have said for many, many years that there's been voter fraud. No Democratic excursion of any kind has gone to the Capitol and tried to take it over because of that, or even challenged elections in that way. So I don't know that would work and it's founded on lies. The court settled it. If you have 60 some court cases nationwide and you've been denied this all of those times, not one. And even I think I was watching it, Lindsey Graham said, okay, they said there were dead people voting, thousands of dead people. Show me 10. They didn't even produce one. And this is Lindsey Graham. Then he said, oh, they said all these people under 18 were voting. Show me 10. They didn't produce one. And it was another one, I can't remember what his thing was. And then he said, show me 10. They didn't produce one. And if there was fact to support this, that would be different. There is no factual basis for it, and it causes a frenzy. Almost like aliens took over my body. Until people can prove that to be true, I'm going to be looked at like I have some instability. So I don't want to get away from that point. I don't think in any way what happened at the Capitol is anywhere near the Black Lives Matter movement, period. That came up after all of these injustices happened. That happened based on a fallacy of thought and outright lies, period. And I'm repeating what other people said. They said,
yeah, I see what you're saying, that
a lie.
My idea would only work if you were dealing with stable people and
the
rational
truth.
people.
Right. And rational people and the truth. some basis of fact. There is none. We said the same thing when Stacey Abrams lost. But the reality was she didn't get the vote because there was not voter education. There was voter suppression based on the way that things were handled. And what she did to rectify that was got out there and taught people what they needed to do to make sure their vote counted. Right. That's how you fix it. You stay inside of the parameters of the law and you educate the people. You don't lie to them and whip them into a frenzy and expect for them to do the right thing. Some of those people did not know they were committing treason and federal crimes. They didn't know that. You know, had they been educated, had they been educated, they probably wouldn't have acted like that. Well, some of them wouldn't. So I think about that. I think that it does the whole country a disservice. Not to mention, we have foreign countries watching us. Everybody in the world is not America's friend. So there are other things that we have to think about. People used to say family business is family business. Keep it in the house. Let's take care of it. We're all Americans. Let's work together to fix it. But don't try to subject me and expect for me to then want to play fair or play right or play nice. It's not going to happen. Not from my perspective and not from me. So that's the thing for me. And that's why I say I get this righteous indignation that's like, look, we can't make it like this is normal and regular policy and politics and practice. You and I have lived through a lot of elections. This is the first time during our lifetime we've seen this.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. And you're right. It is frightening, and it's, but the psychology of the whole thing, though, is just that one idea is trying to overtake another. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that change is always resisted. And I mean, we watch that happen even in our offices when people are needing to compromise in, let's say, a marriage, and some compromise needs to happen. And we watch people dig their heels in, and we have to help people and encourage people to compromise in some way. And, and there'll be an all-out war. And maybe even a divorce at times, right? And I think that that's what's happening, is that we have two ideologies that are at play here, and something's going to happen. Either they're going to find a compromise or they're going to find a divorce, just like we see in our office with people.
But are there two ideologies? And then I'm just asking, are there two ideologies, or is there some craziness going on in addition to the two ideologies?
Well, there's always
that's
craziness.
What I see.
I say there's always craziness, and even because there's always extremes, like you've got the extremes on one side and you got the extremes on the other side too. If you look at the actual Green New Deal that, that like Alexandria Ortega wants to put into play, it even includes not having cows because of the methane that they produce when they fart. I mean, it's really extreme. And then on the other side, you have the extremes of the other side too, is the people, what happened to the Capitol was the extreme of that. And so there's always people who go to the extreme of their ideas, that black and white thinking. And somewhere in the middle is always the truth, is always the right idea, is somewhere in the middle of that. And psychologically speaking, what's best for our clients, you and I, what's best for our clients is some sort of system that includes something that doesn't make it so hard for them to get their medication or so hard for them to get mental health benefits. It's actually gotten easier. And even just recently, I went to fill the prescription for my medication that used to cost me $350 a month because I couldn't take the generic version of mine. It didn't work for me. I would have to buy the name brand. And one time when I was out of the country traveling, I accidentally left my medication home, and I was able to buy, we were in South Africa, and I was able to buy my medication that normally cost me $350 a month for only $50. And so while I was in South Africa, I bought a bunch of my medication and brought it back with me. And it was just awesome to have saved. I saved enough money that I bought me this really beautiful ring while I was there. I spent that money. but but it was just disheartening to me that I had to spend so much money where I could buy that very same medication out of the country for $50. And recently I went to buy my medication and it was only $50. So one of the things that was signed in by the President Trump administration is that pharmacies can no longer charge different amounts in the United States than what they charge out of the country for medication. So that was one good thing that happened. And so that has changed. So now I don't have to pay a ton of money. Some of the other things, that are changing is that mental health is being offered. Mental health coverages are being offered a little bit better. So some of those things are changing, but not to the point where people are being taken care of in the way that they need to. We still have huge homeless populations, and our jails are still filled with our mentally ill. There's just no reason for that. So there's things that could really be taken care of better in our country. And that's what I think this new idea of making sure that people are taken care of, that people want, I think that that's how it could benefit our profession and the people that we take care of. What do you think?
I guess I'm stuck a little bit because I'm all for any policy. I remember that mental health coverage opened up during the Obama administration because it was easier for me to get paneled with insurances when he was in office, and he did the whole Obamacare, and it did expansions to allow us as licensed professional counselors also, where we were kind of getting the short end of the stick. So I think that in we always find, but inside of the political system, I think what I'm worried about is that what will get lost is that these are things that happen outside of the political system, outside of the constitutional system that's been put in place. And that's what's concerning to me. We can debate policy forever. We can debate conservative versus liberal forever. But the reality, we can, right versus left, whatever we want to call it, Republican versus Democrat. But many of these things happen outside of the constitutional system that was put into place. And that is what's concerning. And that there was an outright challenge to the constitutional system, which I believe puts all of us at risk.
Thank you for joining It's All in Your Head podcast. I just want to remind you to subscribe, like, share, and comment below. Thank you.
Because when those things that they call it, I guess, a fragile democracy that's built on those principles, that's the only thing that's holding it together. So when that is challenged, that's when you face these types of things that we see, and these types of feelings, and this type of unrest. That is what is concerning to me. Black Lives Matter, they challenge policy. They challenge training. They challenge where money is going that is supposed to protect people where they watch a young man be shot with his children in the car 7 times in the back by a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the themes that it challenged. So I guess it's different to me when you see the disparities. That's what's concerning, because sometimes I wonder if people really see the disparities. Like, this is true. And that's why it was different. Usually the news or 1 or 2 people would say, if this had been Black Lives Matter, this is what would have happened. Everybody was saying it across the board. So that's not a constitutional issue. That is an issue, that is a racism issue. That is an institutional racism issue. There were people that they showed deputies taking selfies with the people who were storming the Capitol. Mm-hmm. I believe that was because they didn't really know what was going on either. I really feel that way. I think as they were watching it unfold, I don't even think that they believed what was getting ready to happen was going to become violent.
No, I don't think they did either.
Molotov cocktails and vans full of explosives. I don't think that they knew that or thought that, or that could even have been a possibility in their minds. So I think that, again, I'm stressing the difference. Policy aside, we win some, we lose some. We've talked about that before, but this has been different. And it's during a time when many kids are at home watching. Mm-hmm. You know?
And you know, it's interesting too that if they're defending democracy and yet break democratic policies to do it, that's not really making sense.
Oh.
You know?
Mm-hmm. And that's what's concerning, and it's concerning. It gives me pause. I don't want to say fear, but it gives me pause. It really does. Because it's like, what is going on? And I was in shock, like, what? And I remember calling my aunt on the phone and saying, are you watching the news? Because she's like us, you don't really watch a lot of news. And she's like, no. And I said, turn it on. But her response was to immediately start to pray. And it gave me something else, you know, just jump in my mind as I'm sitting there angry. Okay, she started to pray. And I said, that should have been my response. It wasn't, but it should have been, because that makes more sense than just sitting, you know, being mad about it. Because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. They're taking precautions. They're shutting down the city. They're getting ready for the inauguration, all of those things. But it just...
Yeah, that was my reaction, was to just pray that we make it through it, you know, that people are reasonable.
Mm-hmm. I don't even care if they're reasonable, just be sane. Can you be sane about the process? It's okay to be a little bit unreasonable. I think I remember it was one time, it was one election. I said, I wonder what it would cost or what it would take to defect to Canada. that was one. I'm saying, it's just right over the bridge, you know. This is when I lived in Michigan, you know, but it's like, just let's be sane. Let's rebuild, not keep tearing down. Let's rebuild. Because again, foreign countries are watching. We'll be sitting up here and we'll be some other kind of country. We need to be careful what we display for the world to see.
Yeah, and you know, one of the first things that President Biden did was ask for unity. And he's been asking and asking and asking. And and he even said, you know, we'll find compromises, we'll take care of things, and he promised not to implement some of the programs too quickly, so that, you know, it financially hurts the country. And I mean, I think he's really trying to please both sides, which is what a president really needs to do. And so if they listen to him, then I think that would be the best thing to do. You know, I get worried a little bit that that he's not going to be listened to. But
we'll see. We will see. I don't know. We'll see.
Mhm.
We'll see.
Mhm.
We'll see. We can just, I know I've been having to do a lot of counseling around this area with people,
Me too.
just validating people's feelings and just, you know,
Helping them with their fears and their concerns about the future and what that means for them.
mhm,
And yeah, me too. It's come up in many, many sessions. And like you, I can't watch the news because of my anxiety. And I do get angry. I might seem calm about it now, but it does make me angry. And my husband will be listening to news, and I'll say, "Can you please put your headset in or go somewhere else? I can't. I'm getting
right,
angry and upset. I can't listen anymore. I know the basics. The basics are good enough for me."
right.
And now I'm done.
And then redepositing hope. So I've been telling everybody 2021 is your year. It's what you make of it. One of my clients, and I told her that was so profound. She said, I learned a lot in 2020. I grew a lot. I reflected a lot. Now it's time for me to put what I learned in 2020 into practice in 2021.
I
And I
like
thought
that.
that was profound.
I
You
absolutely agree because a lot of my clients worked really hard in 2020. They had to because they were left alone with too many of their own thoughts or had to deal with relationships in a very close way that were not comfortable, and they had to make them comfortable. They had to learn how to relate to people they were not relating well with. They
know.
had to deal with their own addictions that they hadn't dealt with before and their own thinking processes. And my clients work, many of them worked very hard on themselves and they dug deep, and I'm very proud of them. So any of you who are listening, I'm really proud of you. And you're right, it's time for us to take that knowledge that we've gained and then move it forward and use it this next year. And it could make it a really wonderful, amazing year.
Mhm. And
So I
again,
love
like I
that.
said, I always say lead with the love.
With the love. I have to agree
Find
with you on
what
that.
you can agree on that you love. And I think both Democrats and Republicans love this country. So if
I
we
think
can
they
lead with
do
that,
too. Hmm.
if we can lead with that, then there's healing in that love process.
Yeah, I wish there that you know. Let's make a T-shirt. Lead
Okay.
with love.
Lead with the
Karen
love, right?
Karen has a T-shirt available called "Lead with Love,"
Lead with the love. Absolutely. Yeah, we can
and
definitely do that.
that's how we're gonna move forward in 2021, and just make sure that we are respecting and honoring the opinions of each other, even if we don't necessarily agree with each other's opinions, because I don't think that we all want different things. We just want it from a different approach, maybe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Maybe.
if we could, yeah, if we could just come to the same conclusion and maybe figure out how we want to get there. Because as I'm listening to Hamilton, the play, even after the founding fathers won the War of Independence from England, they they went through amazing amounts of angst trying to get the Constitution written and trying to get it right because there were so many contradictions in it, and they had to write into law things that would make sense, and it had to be changed and rechanged and worked and reworked in order to make it work. And if
Mhm.
we're going to rewrite the way that we want our constitution to read or the way that we want our policies to read in our country so that it takes care of more people or that we have more of a socially conscious policy for our country, it's going to be messy. It's going to be like things were when we were learning to walk and we would fall down and cry and our nose would run and it was snotty, and it's going to feel like that if we're going to rewrite our social policies. It's going to be nose runny, snotty crying, feel for a while we get it right, you know? And I think that if we just allow that to happen and know that it isn't going to be comfortable yet, that it'll be uncomfortable until we get it right. I think we'll be okay eventually.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for It's All in Your Head podcast. This has been episode 15. And remember,
Mental health matters.
and if you don't deal with your stuff, it's going to deal with you. Bye-bye.